In the previous video we looked at mechanisms that suppress selfishness and ended up wondering whether there's ever true altruism anywhere. So far we've learned that I might be apparently altruistic if I have a reasonable expectation of reciprocity. I'll help a friend, assuming he'll return the favor someday. So that's actually enlightened self-interest, maybe not true altruism. We also learned that I might seem altruistic to my daughter or my nieces, but I do this as evolved behavior to increase my own inclusive fitness. What about if I don't have children, and neither do my siblings? Could altruism evolve such that we don't have children? Also, could altruism towards strangers evolve, ones you'll never see again? The answer to these questions is yes, under certain circumstances. In this video, we will discuss these circumstances. Consider honeybees. The bee colony consists of different castes: queens, workers, and drones. The queen lays eggs. The workers are females that never reproduce. The drones are males whose main job in life is to find a queen and mate with her. It is clear that both queen and drones are increasing their fitness through reproduction. What about the workers though? It is certainly true that they increase their inclusive fitness by helping their mother, the queen, lay more eggs. However, you'd think they would be able to increase their inclusive fitness even more if they'd lay their own eggs. So why don't they? To answer this, we need to understand how sex is determined in bees. It's different than in us. In humans and many other organisms, both sexes have for all chromosomes one copy from their father and one copy from their mother. We call this diploid. Among all these pairs of chromosomes is also one pair of sex chromosomes. The sex chromosome copy you get from your mother is always the X chromosome. If the copy of the sex chromosome that you get from your father happens to be the Y chromosome, your biological sex is male, XY. If the copy is X, you now have two X's, which makes your biological sex female. At the chromosome level, that's how it works in us. In bees, you are male if of each chromosome you only have one copy. We call this haploid. In contrast, females are diploid. They have two copies, more or less like us, though there are no sex chromosomes. When the male makes a sperm cell, an entire copy of his genetic information ends up in it in order to create a haploid sperm cell. When the queen makes an egg cell, one copy of each pair of chromosomes is picked to make a haploid egg cell. This is actually also like us. Reproductive cells are haploid. If an egg cell of the queen is fertilized, a diploid daughter is produced. If the egg cell is not fertilized, a haploid son is produced. Now, assuming all workers have the same parents, how closely related are they to one another? They all get the same entire set of chromosomes from their haploid father, so that's half of their genome that they already share. When their mother makes eggs, she randomly selects one of the two copies of each chromosome. This makes up the other half of the genome, but because of the random sampling, sisters on average share about half of that half of their genome. In total, they therefore share 75% of the genome. Remember how in a previous video we said that I share 50% of my genome with my brothers. The difference between us and bees is that our fathers are diploid, whereas bee fathers are haploid. When our fathers make sperm, they also, like females, do the random sampling of the chromosomes rather than simply package the full set. Hence, I share 50% of my genome with my brothers, but worker bees share 75% of their genome with their sisters. They are what's called super sisters. Now imagine if the worker bee reproduced. As an aside, they were raised on the right food, they'd become queens and reproduce. So they can. But how related would they be to their children? Given that they're diploid, so they have two copies of chromosomes, they pass on one copy. This means they share 50% of their genome with their children, just like I do with my daughter, by the way. So, paradoxically, worker bees are more closely related to their siblings than to their own children. This means it is actually more in their interest to help the queen make more siblings than it is to reproduce themselves. The example of the bees answered the question whether it would make sense to be altruistic if you don't reproduce yourself. Apparently, sometimes it does, for example in these bees. And we call their behavior eusocial, or truly social, and it is easiest to understand in species that have haplodiploid sex determination. In these cases, the behavior of the individual is reconciled with its genetic interests through the evolution of a complex caste system. However, you can imagine this only works under the right conditions, that is, if all workers have the same father, so they're all super closely related. What if individuals are not related? If they see each other often, they might be nice or naughty to each other as quid pro quo that can be explained through game theory. What if they're both not related and they don't see each other often? Could altruism still evolve? Let's find out. Imagine if a variant of a gene was able to make its carrier recognize the presence of the variant in other carriers. For example, a gene variant that causes a green beard to grow. All the carriers of the variant would be able to recognize one another. From the perspective of the variant, though not necessarily the entire genome or the individual, it makes sense to make the carrier be nice to other carriers. Hence, we would expect the recognizable trait, such as the green beard, to be genetically linked to traits that make the carrier be nice to other carriers. An example of this has been found in slime molds. Individuals of these single-celled organisms, although unrelated, work together to jointly form a stalk at the tip of which is a fruiting body that produces spores for dispersal. In slime molds, there's a gene that codes for a protein that helps in building the stalk by making the cells stick to one another. Cells in which that gene has been knocked out experimentally are left behind when the stalk is built, and so they don't get the help of the rest of the colony to disperse. In other words, the stickiness protein is both the green beard, as it can be recognized on the cell surface, and the means by which its carrier helps one another. So, the slime molds might be nice to each other even if they're not exactly related, but because it furthers the evolutionary interests of a gene that they share. Perhaps we really don't see altruism in nature anywhere. Mind you, I'm not saying it ought to be this way. Being animals with a shared culture, we are prone to saying that we ought to be altruistic and sacrifice for the group we belong to. In the next video, we will have a brief discussion to talk about why we say that we all ought to be altruistic, yet we rarely truly are.